Do you feel isolated? We've just had some flooding here where I live in southeast Queensland, and people have been physically isolated from each other, cut off from the rest of the world. And it's quite an eerie feeling knowing that there's really no way out into the rest of the world. But of course there's been the COVID-19 pandemic, which has forced us indoors and really brought about many more isolation issues in our world. That's on top of all the other ways that we can feel isolated from each other. I know when I was growing up, I had a time in my life where I found it hard to make friends. And often at school I'd feel isolated from others. And it's a bit of a vicious cycle, I know, that you make efforts to reach out to people. And when it doesn't go well, you're sort of driven back further in to your isolation. And it's not a pleasant feeling. Nobody wants to be alone. Nobody wants that. Now, we're going to talk about that in this video, about isolation. What is it about humans that makes us want to hide at times? But we're going to start by looking at an extreme version of isolation that's happening in Japan. One of you actually sent me this article, very interesting. They're called the hikikomori, people that live completely shut off from the outside world. Let's see what we can learn. So the hikikomori are defined as having spent 6 months or more not participating in society, without mental illness being the main cause. Now, this is a growing problem and a real problem. You can just imagine all of the impacts of having people shut off from the outside world. People who have been withdrawn from society for a long time feel that their lives have no meaning or value, and they become extremely miserable. You can imagine that. It's too painful for them to see their situation as being their own fault, and they begin to blame their parents for not raising them properly. And while it's difficult to tell how many people are living like this, some estimates have been made that 10 million people could be living in isolation within Japan alone. And this is not an issue only in Japan. It's estimated that South Korea has maybe 300,000 of these cases, and it's been reported in places like Italy as well. Now, this particular form of isolation, hikikomori, is a problem that seems to come in family-centered societies where young adults are continuing to live with their parents. In countries with strong senses of individualism, like the USA and Britain, the hikikomori problem is relatively small. It's more isolation out on the streets in the form of homelessness. That's a slight difference in the way it's expressed. Seems to be a cultural thing. And we see in Japan other factors involve the rigid social norms, high expectations from parents, and a culture of shame. It makes this society in Japan a breeding ground for feelings of inadequacy, the desire to keep one's head below the parapet. I don't know if you've experienced that, where the expectations are high, you feel you don't live up to them, and so you withdraw. How does a person get to the point, though, that extreme point of deciding never to venture out of their homes? It might start with a small matter, a small problem maybe at work, but if the condition persists for an extended period, it can lead to depression, a fear of people, sleep-wake inversion, and other psychiatric conditions. So it's key that this is responded to promptly, that people develop contact with outside society quickly before it becomes very entrenched. Technology can be another factor. You may have considered that, the way that we can do so much online today without going out, shopping, playing, socializing, without the need for any real-world interactions. And it's been shown that contact in person or even on video chat corresponds with a lower risk of depression compared to contact by phone, email, social media. So it's really important that we go beyond these simple forms of contact. That it shows the importance of looking people in the eye, of being with people. Now, hiding, something we all do to some extent. Have you noticed that? That when you do something wrong, there's this feeling of guilt and shame when you don't live up to perceived expectations. We tend to withdraw. Why is that? Have you thought about that? We're seeing this hikikomori here, this extreme example of something that we all deal with from time to time. So if that's you, if you're feeling isolated from the world, if you're feeling alone and the need to hide parts of who you are, this is not a problem that's unique to you. This is something that everyone deals with, I believe, to some extent. And one of the first stories in the Bible talks about this. When the cool evening breezes were blowing, the man and his wife heard the Lord walking among the garden, and they hid from the Lord among the trees. This relationship they had had previously with God, this deep intimacy, was broken by their disobedience. They didn't go out to meet God as usual. They withdrew. They felt shame and they hid. And this is what this guilt, shame continues to do. It makes us withdraw. It separates us from God and people. Now that's the reason Jesus came. Jesus came into the world to bridge that divide between us and God, between us and other people. There's no longer Jew or Gentile, slave or free, male or female, for you're all one in Christ Jesus. In fact, growing together in wholeness is what Haven is all about. We're all about becoming whole together. And that's what we're working towards. And I invite you to become and join us in that. None of us are perfect. Wherever you are on the journey, I encourage you to take the first step, which is reaching out. Hello, tell us your name with any of the communication methods below, and it would be great to eventually get to talking with you face to face or in a Zoom call. If you don't feel that you can reach out to anyone else, we're here. Otherwise, I encourage you to, if you are dealing with this, make a step. Because there are people out there that care about you, and there's a God that loves you. He doesn't want you to remain in isolation. He's made a way through Jesus to bridge that gap, to heal our shame and guilt. And if that's something that you'd like to hear more about, again, please send us a message to start with. Can give you some more information about that. But thank you for watching right the way through. I encourage you to stay with us on this journey, and as I said before, please connect. You're not alone.